what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to a special edition of Higher Ed Pulse. I'm your host, Mallory Wilsey, and we're live at the 2024 AMA Symposium for the Marketing of Higher Education, bringing you conversations directly from the floor with thought leaders, innovators, and industry changemakers. Let's dive in and check the pulse of what's happening right here at the symposium. All right, friends, we're back live at AMA, and I'm now sitting down with Tina Miller, the Executive Director of Creative and Communications at Enterprise Technology at ASU. Tina is no stranger to the Enrollify network, and it has just been a delight getting to know her since we met at ASU GSV. So I am so thrilled to have this opportunity, Tina, to talk to you today. How has AMA been going?
It has been great. First of all, it's in Vegas, so you've got to love Vegas. But it's so great to hear all of the different things that are going on in higher ed. Everything from AI to enrollment to student success, talking about the enrollment cliff. You know, there's so many great things that are happening in higher ed right now. And as marketing and communications professionals, this is an exciting time for us to be able to promote all of those things.
All right, Tina, so I know that you are actually presenting tomorrow morning on artificial intelligence. So for all of our listeners who have FOMO because they can't be in Vegas with us, give them a little sense, a little taste of what you are going to be presenting on tomorrow.
Love to. And thank you again for having me on the show this morning. So what I've done, I present a lot to groups around the country. And one of the things I started noticing in the past year is that people were coming up to me saying, how do I implement this on my team? How do I get my team interested in this? And what I realized is there is a need for leaders out there to understand that with AI, it's up to them to start adopting it to their teams. And so they're the ones they have to start learning and jumping in. And a lot of times with leaders, they might be waiting for their supervisor or their campus president to say, okay, we're going to do something with AI. And really what I'm here to talk to leaders about is the importance of adopting it to your team now, even if it is not widespread in your institution. Just jump in and start learning, because as marketing and communications professionals, we are going to be leading the charge on this.
And look, let's be real. Their teams are already using AI, whether the leaders know it or not, whether it's sanctioned or not. It's just, people are just starting to ideate and try things out. But I think you're spot on in, if it's not coming from leadership, if there's not guidelines and acceptance, it's never going to permeate throughout the institution. The institution's never going to realize its full transformational potential in using AI if the teams are not getting permission. So let's dig into it. What are some of the things that you are advising to leaders right now?
Well, first it starts with literacy. And there is a difference between being literate and being fluent in AI. But it starts with literacy, and that means you have to educate yourself as a leader. You have to go out there. And when I first took this job at Arizona State University, I knew nothing about AI. It wasn't even uttered, and that was the summer of 2023. And so for me, I knew I had to jump in and just start learning. So I started by listening to podcasts, listening to the wonderful Enrollify podcast at Element 451, little plug there, but I just started educating myself. And so that's what I say is jump in with literacy and become literate in it. But it's not just to be literate to understand, here's how I use the tool, or here's what AI is, but then you have to be fluent in it. You have to be able to use those tools in a way that could help build your team's rapport. It can help build processes within your team. And then also, as educators, we have to be able to teach our students not just what AI is, but to have them be fluent in it so they know how to be responsible in it. They know how to think reasonably and to create projects and things using it so that when they go out into the workplace, they're prepared. So I've kind of talked about two things, but you can still be a leader among students too, even if you're not a leader in your department with AI, but it starts with literacy.
So the number one thing that I hear from leaders is that time is the barrier. They feel like you mentioned all the things happening in higher ed at the top of this interview. Yeah. Leaders are stretched very thin. Teams are stretched very thin. Now I think agree that AI can be a tool to help overcome some of those barriers, but you do need to spend the time at the top, getting fluent, getting literate, understanding the tools. But I'm just going to say again, like, that is what leaders keep telling me. I don't have time to learn it. I keep saying, you don't not have time to learn it. But what would you respond to if that was pushback that you got from someone sitting in the room tomorrow?
Well, I think it goes back to a priority. Are you prioritizing it on your team? And for me, I made it a priority, and so there were other things that had to take a back seat to it because I prioritized this. So as a leader, you have to understand what's going on with your institutions, what are your priorities. But I will argue that this was the number one priority on my team, and so I found time for it. But if your listeners out there don't have as much time, one of the things they can start doing, I started listening to the Marketing Institute podcast, or Marketing AI podcast, hosted by Paul Reitzer. And I started listening to that. And I started listening to Hard Fork, which is a New York Times podcast. I started listening to other podcasts, again, the ones that Element 451 puts out. Because to me, I wanted to just understand what are the trends, what's happening. And I started reading newsletters. And then I started having conversations with like-minded people like you and others that I met at conferences or that work in higher ed to say, what are you doing? And so we're, trading notes on things. But to me, I say you're right. It's not, you can't not afford to do this. You just have to prioritize it and determine what's most important for you in moving your institution forward.
Yeah, I co-sign everything you just said. At our Engage Summit this past summer, Jeff Salingo was our closing keynote, and he likened where we are at right now in this moment with AI to the internet in 1995. And I watched the room, I think that unlocked something for people because we know where we are now, how many years later after 1995. That is what is happening. That is the revolution that we are sitting in. And institutions are going to be left behind. Let's just, I just want to be frank about that. I heard a stat that every week at this point, an institution's door is closing. We are in a shrinking industry. This is a real challenge. And maybe the industry is right-sizing for the better, but the schools that are closing, right? This is where I get at. You can't afford not to pay attention to this, because if your teams are stretched thin and you're not bringing in the students and you need to improve your student engagement, AI can really help leaps and bounds. We have customers at Element 451 who have taken hold of AI early on and are seeing real success. 12% increases in their enrollment numbers. Application costs dropping by 90%. I mean, it's just the results are very real. And I think until there's more success stories like that, until institutions are really connecting those dots to the institutional goals, I think that's going to help leaders get on board too.
I agree. And so at Arizona State University, we're an early adopter of AI. We're leading in this space. There's a reason we are the country's #1 university for innovation 10 years in a row. And it starts at the top. And President Crow said, we are doing this and we are leading it. And so we all got behind President Crow because that's what you need, is a leader at the top saying that. But for us, there are 3 areas of AI that we have at Arizona State University. And if the AI doesn't fit in with one of those 3 areas, we're not going to go forward with it. So number 1 is teaching and learning success. It has to be able to somehow augment that. Number 2 is research for societal impact. Are there ways that you can use AI? And we've got, millions and millions of, we're a major public research university. We have millions of dollars that are being funded for AI projects. And then we also have the future of work. That's the stuff where, if you're, trying to redo your emails or trying to redo video scripts or something like that. So it has to be one of those 3 areas, and that's what we focus on. That allows us to focus on the impact instead of just giving out ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or one of the other to everybody and letting them use it. But what are they using it for? And so, we took that concept and worked with OpenAI and launched the AI Innovation Challenge, where faculty, staff, and researchers can submit proposals to use ChatGPT for one of those 3 impact areas. So we've to date we've had over 500 proposals, and we have more than 250 projects in flight right now.
I think you talked to Brian Piper on AI for You live at Hyatt Web about that initiative. Is that right? So listeners, there you go. You got to go listen to that episode too if you are curious to hear more about it. Well, Tina, it's been just a absolute delight having the opportunity to officially interview you. Any parting thoughts on this topic before we wrap up?
I would say just follow your curiosity, be open-minded. And here's the other thing. I would like to leave this with your listeners. You are not alone. If you think that everybody else has this figured out, nobody has this figured out yet. You're not alone. So the best thing you can do is jump in wherever you're at and just start learning about AI.
It's exciting early days where experimentation is embraced and anything feels possible. So, Tina, thank you again. And listeners, keep an eye out for more of these great Live at AMA episodes all week long. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.